Hello there. It's been a while, hasn't it? Let's press play. Today's episode is entitled Cirklon Aux Event Introductional Video Message. This is a brief introduction to the aux events of the Cirklon sequencer. I'll be going through most of the aux events and explaining what each one does and giving short basic examples of how they work. I won't be going through all of them. I've left out the accumulators because they deserve a video of their own. So, are you ready to dive in and learn some useless stuff? It's useful. One note. Make sure to update your firmware. I say that every time, but while I was going through the aux events, I found some bugs that Colin fixed. So, to get the full benefit of this lesson, please update to the latest firmware. Trust me, you want to do that. It's a long video. Wait, did I say it was brief? I meant not brief. So, get a cup of tea or a big glass of red wine or a beer or whatever, some biscuits, and prepare your brain for some events. Some aux events. Okay, I better get on with it, right? I'm liking this tune though. All one note, by the way. I'll teach you how to do this in the episode. Let's begin. Let's start with a new P3 pattern. And let's go to the pattern page. And we're gonna go over some aux row basics. First of all, there are 4 aux rows per P3 pattern. However, you can get around the 4-row limit by using a special aux called a redirect, but we're going to talk about that later on, and for now we're going to pretend that the 4 rows is the limit before we start going too crazy. So each row you can add a type of aux, and let's add our first one. Let's push row encoder and turn, push row encoder and turn, and here we see the aux group list and MIDI CC. MIDI CC is not an aux event, so that doesn't count. But we have 13 groups of auxes here, and each group has a different number of aux events inside it. We're going to start off with the set step value group. So we push the value encoder here, and we see all the different aux events inside here. We have set note, set velocity, set length, set delay, transpose by an amount, add an amount to aux C, add an amount to aux D, and set MIDI channel. But we're gonna go to set note first of all. These all seem really simple, these ones, and they are. But when you combine them with other auxes, that's when they get interesting and complicated. But we're just gonna go through the simple ones first before we do more complicated examples. So we have set note on our aux A row here, and we're going to add, we're going to go back up to here and just turn the note on so we hear it. We're going to lower the velocity a bit to 77. Okay, so we haven't turned our aux on yet. We've set it up on the row, but it isn't activated. So to activate it on this step, we just press this, and now we're going to change the value. We have set note. We want to set it to D8. There we go. So instead of hearing C4, our original note, we're now hearing D8. Now you're thinking, why didn't I just change C4 to D8 up here? Well, we'll come to that later. Don't worry. Stick with me. So we have set note as our in aux A. Now, one of the rules we have to remember of auxes is that the rows are processed in order, alphabetical order. So row A happens first, then row B, then row C, then row D. So if I put a set note aux event in row B, while I already have one in row A, let's put the same one in and a different note though. A#4. You'll hear that the aux B set note aux event is overruling the aux A set note aux event. So the aux A set note aux event, currently we're not hearing it. We're hearing aux B. So the same thing happens if we put one in aux C. Let's put in set note there. C#6. There we go. So obviously aux C now is the one we're hearing, because that's the last one that's currently on, it's being processed. And finally, if we put one in aux D, it's F#5. There we go. So we have 4 set notes, one on each aux row, but it's only the last one we're going to hear. So A, B, and C, they're not doing anything. They're useless. I'm just showing you that the aux events are processed A, B, C, and D. So in the future, when you have more complicated aux setups, you have to keep this in mind when you're making auxes change each other. You have to remember that it's done in this order. So let me give you another example. Let's go to we're still in the set step value group, and I'm gonna go to transpose by N, which just transposes the note. Now, it's not doing anything. Why is that? It's because after the transpose, we're then setting the note. So we're not hearing the transpose. So if we turn these ones off, now we're hearing our transpose. Let's move this down to 0. So there's no transpose, and now 12, that's an octave up, 24, another octave up. So the transpose is on aux A, but that'll be cancelled out by aux C if I turn it on. And that'll also be cancelled out by aux D when I turn that on. So the order of the aux event is important. That is aux event rule number 1, the main rule. For our next example, I'm gonna add a aux note aux event just to give us some polyphony on the P3 pattern. You've seen these before in a previous video I've made. There's aux note absolute, which means you specify a note. Aux note relative, which is a number, and that number is a semitone above the root note. And then the same two again, except they ignore force to scale. So I'm gonna pick aux note relative, and I'm gonna gang these 3 notes, and I'm gonna change the aux value to 3. So that's giving us a little chord there. But I want another note, so I'm gonna go to aux row C, add relative again. There we go. Let's go to the notes actually and put them up an octave. That's much nicer. So let's go to aux row B and go back to our set step value group that we were working through. Set velocity. pretty obvious what this one is going to do, but let's just do it anyway. These three are still ganged, by the way. That's why they're all working together. Let's turn off the gang so we can individually adjust them. Okay, so that's the set velocity aux event. It's pretty standard. Let's add another one from the set step value group. Set length. Now, normally each note can be up to 96 steps long. The set length aux event only lets you go up to 5 steps long, because an aux event number is an 8-bit number, so that's max of 255 steps. So that's gives us 5 of these steps long. You can hear it working there. That's the set length aux event, pretty straightforward as well. Let's remove that and add the set delay. What this is doing is moving the note off the grid. Here it's pushing it off 47, almost a full note, and here it's playing it early, minus 47 ticks, so it's almost a full note early. Obviously, the very first step can't be early, so let's just make that a bit later. And let's tone these down a bit. That's the set delay aux event, pretty straightforward as well. You'll notice there when I changed the aux event, the values stayed. So I go to set length, or let's go back to set velocity. See, I tricked myself there. The set velocity on aux B is going to win out over the set velocity on aux A, which I just remembered. Good rule to remember. Let's change this to set note. And the note ranges are pretty wild, but it is working. So let's remove these values and pick a different aux event. What one have we not tried yet? Add N to aux C and add N to aux D. So what these are going to do is these are going to add a value to aux C, whatever is on aux C. Currently what's on aux C is aux note relative. So let's change this. You can hear it's added 13 to that. 24, and this is too high. Let's go minus. So that's adding the value there to aux C, and aux C is aux note relative. And if we change that to aux note D, it does exactly what you think. It'll add that value to aux D instead. Getting some nice chords there, actually, surprisingly. The last aux event in the set step value group is the set MIDI channel, which is pretty cool. So before we change this, actually, I need to go into the track page menu, more, user config. Now, normally I have this flag set on, aux edit sets flag. What that means is that when I turn the encoder in an aux row, it automatically turns on the aux, so it'll begin working. Sometimes you want to have that off, so you turn it on and off yourself. I'll show you the difference. First of all, I'll leave it on and I'll go back here. And when I turn the encoder to change the MIDI channel, you can see that the encoder, the aux step activated. And we're now sending to MIDI channel, going out the Cirklon MIDI port 1 on channel 2, but I've got nothing connected to that, so I want to change this to, scroll up a bit, CV3. That's my SH101. But you'll notice that when I turn the encoder, it turns on the aux step straight away, which activates the aux. Sometimes you don't want that to happen though, so go back to track, go to menu, more, user config. Let's turn that off. Aux edit, sets flag, turn that off. Go back to the pattern page. So now, when I change the aux event, let's go to step 7. And when I turn the encoder, now it won't turn on the aux. It'll just change the value without activating it. So I want to change this to port 3, channel 8, and I turn it on. That's my Pro 1. So the SH101 channel is playing the first 6 steps, not all the steps are on, but the first 6 steps until 7. Then the MIDI channel gets changed to where the Pro 1 is. So let's go down here and change it to the Nord again, which is on the USB host port to channel 1. And then we turn it on. So SH101 is playing, then the MIDI channel changes to the Pro 1, then the MIDI channel changes to the Nord. Just a bit of further explanation on the display of the set MIDI channel. This is currently showing, let's go to a step that's not on. This is currently showing the 1 is the MIDI output of the Cirklon, and the one after it is the MIDI channel. So if I turn this up, it'll go 1 up to 16, then it'll go to port 2 on the back of the Cirklon. And there's 5 of those ports in the back of the Cirklon. So then once it goes to 516, after that it changes to CV. There's 16 CV channels. I'll go to 16. Then it'll change to the USB device port. Each of those has 16 channels, and there's 6 of those ports. So USB 1 up to 16, USB 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 16. Then it changes to the USB host port. Now the USB host port is only on the Cirklon 2, not the Cirklon 1. And also there's a little caveat here. Caveat. There's a little thing to remember here. Because the aux event number is an 8-bit number, it can only have a maximum of 256 values. So that means, unfortunately, currently, you can only go up to MIDI host, USB host port 4 channel 16, even though there are 16 host ports. So once you get to host 416, we've used up all the 256 values, and I've done some of the maths here to show you, right? So the MIDI is 5 by 16, that's 80. CV is another 16. USB device port is 6 by 16, that's 96. And then host is 4 by 16, that's 64. It only goes up to 4, and that's a total of 256 values. The maths is good, guys. So that's why we can only get to USB host port 4 channel 16. Now we're going to look at the Randomize group of aux events. Currently I have a P3 pattern set up with 2 aux note relative to make a 3-note chord. Let's go to the Randomize group. In the Randomize group there are 12 different auxes. Randomize note, velocity, length, delay. Randomize aux B, C, and D. You'll see a lot of this, by the way, just B, C, and D because you can't use an aux to do stuff to aux row A because it's the first aux row. So if you want to randomize aux B, you'd have to put that on aux A. So you'll see a lot of B, C, Ds going through the aux events. And down here we have the random masks. We'll get to those in a minute, they're very interesting. But let's start with the randomize note, which is pretty obvious. Let's add it. We've got 4 steps here, so let's randomize this. So what it's doing now is it's adding the first step here. I've got plus 20, so it'll randomly add up to plus 20 semitones to the note. And that'll change the chord because the root note changes and aux note relative will play its notes relative to the root chord. So we're getting chord changes. Now, this sounds quite cool, but it's not always musically useful because it's a bit all over the place. So what I like to do sometimes is apply force to scale. There we go. So that kind of tames the randomness here. And it sounds pretty cool. I did force the scale on the scene there just because it's quicker than going into the track and going through that. You all know how to do force to scale already from my previous video. Not going to go through that again. So that's aux A. We've got randomize note. Let's go to aux B and add another randomize. What else have we got? Randomize velocity. Another pretty self-explanatory one. You can hear the velocity being randomized on each step there. If I just went to one step. Oops, there we go. It's going from the original velocity down minus 120 randomly. So that's how random velocity works. Pretty self-explanatory again. So we've currently got 4 rows taken up. So I'm going to just replace random velocity with randomize length. Same rules apply as the set length. It'll change the length to a maximum of 5 notes, more or less. So it works better for you. Yeah, pretty straightforward. You can hear that in action. Let's change this again to randomize delay. Works as you would expect. It's pushing them all off. Now that one's going to play shorter sometimes before the step, and the rest are playing after the step. Random amounts. Oh, there's no note on that. What am I doing? There we go. Randomize delay. Okay, randomize aux B, C, and D. We're on aux row B, so what if we randomize aux row C with aux row B? So, what's on aux row C? We've got our aux note relative, so that's been randomized by aux note B now. So if you listen, one of the notes of the chords is going to be random. And we can change that to D. There we go. So now aux B is randomizing aux row D, which is another aux note relative. So that's a different note in the chord being randomized, but sounds pretty much the same as before. So that's randomized note, velocity, length, delay, randomize aux B, C, and D. The randomized aux B, C, and D become much more useful when combined with other things. We'll see that later. Now next up we're going to look at the masks, the random masks. First of all, I have an SH101 pattern set up here, but we're going to make it even better sound, if that is possible. And it is possible, trust me. Currently we've no auxes set up, so let's go to aux row A, go back to randomize. We've done note velocity length delay, aux ECD, we know what they do, but now we're going to go to random mask gate. Now what does this do? A mask basically turns off a gate step or turns off an aux step, so it stops them from happening. So if I want note number 1 to only play 50% of the time, I add a random mask gate and then I turn this to 50. And you'll already notice note 1, wait for it, there, see, it's only playing 50% of the time. Now this becomes much more obvious when we set every note. Let's just gang everything here and set it all to 50. Or 60 actually is nice. So now you can hear every single note has a 60% chance of playing. And it's making the pattern sound much more varied and interesting. If you have some notes that you want to play 100% of the time, that's easily done. You can turn this to 100. Now that note will play 100% of the time. Or, if it was back down at 60 or whatever, you can just turn the aux event off. So now even though it says 60, it's not activated, so that note will play 100% of the time. You'll notice that some steps have the random mask gate on them, even though there's no note on them. That's just because I ganged every note, just because there's a shortcut to do that. So the masks, the random masks that are on notes with no note, they're not doing anything. So now, let's have this note play 30% of the time, this note play 80%, this note play only 10% of the time, turn it off on that one, and this note plays 90% of the time, this note plays 17. There we got an interesting pattern going. Random mask gate, very useful for creating nice variations in patterns. Now let's go to aux row B, see what else we have in the randomize group. We have random mask gate, we also have random mask tie. Let's go to that. So let's turn off all our random mask gates for a moment. So now we hear all the notes, and there are all their notes there. Now you remember from a previous video, the tie. Let's go to tie here. If I add them, you'll hear I've got portamento set up as well, so you can hear the tie working properly. So I'm tying every note almost. But once we have those ties on, we can go to random as tie, and once again, let's do every single. So now the tie will only happen 50% of the time. So you hear the slide sometimes and not others. Now let's combine that. Turn on our random mask gates and our notes. So you'll hear the notes sometimes and you'll hear the tie sometimes. Pretty interesting. If you're doing a live set, you can just set that up, have the Cirklon playing on the stage, go off and have a pint. Cirklon's doing all the work for you. Perfect. That's the future. Got a new pattern here going. This time it's the Pro 1. I'm trying to change the instruments every so often so people don't get bored during this multiple hour-long video. Anyway, no auxes here, so let's jump in. We're going through Randomize. we've been through all of these. So the last ones to look at are random mask, aux, B, C, and D. These are basically the same thing, except they work on different aux rows. So let's select random mask, aux, D. And what this is going to do, we put that on aux A. What that does is it turns on and off randomly whatever aux we have running on aux D. So remember the boring set step value auxes? This is where they become very useful. Check this out, right? We're gonna go in here. We're gonna go transpose by n. So we have that on aux D. So let's gang our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes and put them all up an octave. Right, so we've set them all up 1 octave. But what happens if we are able to turn that on and off randomly using this random mask aux D? This is what happens. Whoop, I've already got it there. What am I doing? Push the row encoder and turn off the gang. Let's make that 50%, 60, 30, 40, and 70. So you can hear the transpose up an octave is being turned on and off randomly by this percentage on each step, which makes it much more interesting. Now, so we can couple that with a random mask gate to make things even more interesting. Let's turn the gang back on. So now they're just playing 60% of the time. The note is going to play 60% of the time. And whether or not the note plays, the value will get transposed up and down different percentages of the time. I varied those. Let's vary the notes as well, actually. So let's turn it off for the first note. And let's have this note play only 40% of the time. Gonna cheat and add some reverb there, or rather some delay, to make it extra spacey, but I know that's cheating, but it sounds really good. So, got an interesting pattern going now, with just 16 steps, 1 bar. So, we have the Pro one there. Where are we? On the SH101. Here's one I've prepared earlier. We've got these notes, and I've put random mask gate 20% on the notes. That's all I've done for the SH101. So, you can see how the randomize mask gate and the randomize mask, aux, and the randomize in general very quickly get some useful melodies going. Send this off to a record label. No bother. So, that is all the randomize auxes we've gone through now. And now we see how they can influence and be connected to other auxes, like the set note, set velocity. I could have any of these on and just turn them on and off with another aux. It's very useful. Next up, we're going to look at the global control aux events. Now, currently, this is my SH101 pattern. You'll see that I've got all the rows used up. Aux A is random mask gate, which turns the notes on and off randomly. Aux B is randomize note, and let's see, its randomize note is +6 semitones, so between 0 and 6 semitones added on. C is random mask aux D, so the 50% of aux D happening, and aux D is just transposing the pattern up an octave, up 12 semitones. The randomized note doesn't sound too random because I'm forcing to scale. I'm using the Mixolydian scale there, which is a particular favorite of mine for moody electro at 140 BPM. But as you can see, our 4 rows are used up here on this track. But we can go to another track and we can set up more aux events, and you don't have to have an instrument on your track for the aux events to work. So let me show you. Let's create a new P3 pattern. There's no instrument there. See, that's empty, but we'll still go into the pattern anyway. And we'll go to aux row A, and we'll go to global control. In here, there are 4 aux events: mute track, unmute track, set tempo, and set scene transpose. So let's pick mute track first, and my SH101 is on track 2, my rhythm is on track 1, so let's mute track 2. So you heard now track 2 is not playing anymore because we've got a step 1 of track 3 is muting track 2. So we go back to track here, the track view. If I turn on track 2, see, I'll turn on it. It's going to get muted at the start of the track 3 pattern. So that's the muting in action. If I turn off track 3, track 2 won't get muted anymore because the aux and track 3 has to be active for the auxes to affect track 2. And now it's working again. So that's the mute. Now, one thing to note is that a track can also mute itself. So I was currently muting track 2, now I'm going to mute track 3. So this isn't very useful currently, but I'm just showing you a track can mute itself. Track 3 is muted itself. Let me turn it on, muted itself again, but it can't unmute itself. It's not able to unmute itself. But another track could unmute this track when it's muted. Let's show that in action by going to track 4. And let's just create another P3 pattern. Let's go into global control. Let's go to unmute track. And let's stick it on step number 9 this time. We're going to unmute track number 3. So now, track number 4 is unmuting track 3 at step number 9, but then track 3 is muting itself at step number 1. So you can see it being muted and unmuted there. This is another nice example of the global mute aux in action. You see our drums just got muted there and then unmuted. Now, track 5 is doing that, so let's have a look at track 5. What's happening here? So on aux row D, I have my mute track N, and we can see on step 1, I'm muting track number 1, and that's the only one that's on, all the rest are off. But up here on aux A, I have random mask aux D. So that mute will only happen 30% of the time that step plays. And on aux B, I have unmute track 1 right at the end. So whenever track 1 does get muted, it'll be unmuted by the end of this pattern, but it won't always be muted by the start of the pattern. It'll only be muted 30% of the time. So we're hearing the drums being muted about 30% of the time. And that works. And also, one thing to note is the drum track is my analog rhythm. That's a CK pattern. It's not a P3 pattern. You can mute CK patterns with a P3 pattern. It's pretty funky, this one. And that's the global mute and unmute in action. But let's have a look at there's another global aux event. Let's see, do we have room here? Yeah, we do. Aux C. Let's go to global control. And the last one, the second last one is set scene transpose. So what happens if we do this? Whoa. So we set it to -4, which lowers the scene, the transpose for all the tracks. It's a scene-wide transpose. Obviously, go up as well. And a bit like the set step aux event, this works really well when you are able to control it with another aux. So I'm going to turn that one off, or rather, I'm going to set it back to 0. There we go. And then turn it off. And let's go to, because we were running out of auxes there. Let's go to a new track, start a new P3 pattern. On aux D, we'll put our global control set scene transpose. But on aux C, we will randomize aux D, randomize the value of aux D. And we'll, let's say, between 0 and -5, and then put you to 1. So every time that plays, it's going to change the scene transpose. But we can also, on aux B, randomize the scene change happening by random mask aux D. So we can have this only happen 50% of the time, randomly. So now there's a 50% chance that aux D will change the scene. And when it does change the scene, it'll be randomized by aux C. You got that? You can hear it happening. And you can try this yourself. All these kind of things, it's easier to understand them, I find, when you practice them a little bit. But we got a nice groove going. We got the scene changing, and we got track 1 being muted and unmuted every so often. Once again, perfect live show. Stick this on the stage. You go off, have a pint. Everyone's dancing. There's one more global aux event I want to show you. I'm gonna go back to the Pro 1 track here. You can hear the Pro 1 there doing the bass. But I'm gonna go back here because we got 3 free aux rows that we can use. So down in aux D, I'm gonna go to global control, and the last one is set tempo. Guess what this does? You guessed correctly, it sets the tempo. So let's, it's 85 BPM now. Oh, nice and slow. Now, let's move this to 130. And on aux C, we'll do another global control set tempo as well. And we'll move this to 65, which which is half of 130. But you'll notice that it's still playing at 130 BPM. Remember the rule. Aux A happens, then aux B, then aux C, then aux D. And if the two auxes are changing the same thing, aux D will have the final say. But we can play around with this. In aux B, we can go to our old friend, Rndmz, aux D. You're gonna end up using these random masks a lot, let me tell you, because they're amazing. And we can have aux D not happen, let's say, 30% of the time. Oh no, let's do it 80% of the time. So, aux D is not gonna play 80% of the time. That means 80% of the time it'll be 65 BPM, and 20% of the time it'll be 130 BPM. So currently, change there. And our drums are still being muted and unmuted to add to the chaos stroke amazingness. So that's the set tempo. Now, set tempo is set per step, so you can do crazier things. Let's turn off this aux. I usually set them back to MIDI CC when I don't want anything there. There, MIDI CC. So now we just have our set tempo on aux D. You'll notice this is the actual BPM, but here is just the value 0 to 255, which is what the auxes do. So if I do something like this, look. Gang it a bit. So we got it starting at 63 BPM and then going up to 239 BPM and a nice little undanceable slope. One thing I haven't pointed out, but you should notice already, is that the P-tree patterns, we can change the speed that they play at. So if I change this to the time base of 4 instead of 16, the change in tempo is going to be slower. It's going to ramp up slower. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the muting and unmuting of the drums so we can keep the drums on. We can hear the tempo change better. We can reverse it this way as well, so it starts off fast and goes slow. And also you can change the way this pattern plays, and that'll affect how it works as well. So if we put this to random, oh, we have a 0 there. We need to change that to, there we go. So now we're gonna get random changes in BPM. I don't know if this is a good live set. Let's speed up the bottom ones a bit. There we go. So it's randomly hopping between all these different BPMs. So we got 204, all these are the actual BPMs down at the bottom. 104, 93, 82, 60, down to 37. And that's the set tempo. And once again, you can get creative with set tempo. You can mask and unmask it. You can randomize it. One thing we could do is we can make this pattern just one step long. Hold last. Oops. Okay, so now our tempo is 199. Let's move that down to. It's only playing this step, so the tempo is 119. And if we randomize that, it's gonna get pretty freaky. Random aux D, and we'll change the speed of the pattern down to the slowest. There we go. it's more noticeable. So that's the set tempo. You randomized and messed with. Great for annoying people on the dance floor, that one. Get some bottles hurled at your baby. Well, I suppose it depends on the club. The next aux group we're going to look at is the knob grab aux group. But first of all, let's add some notes to my SH101 pattern here. G4 is good, yeah. So, on aux row A, we're going to find the knob grab group. There it is there. There's 4 of these. Knob value to velocity, knob value to length, knob value to aux C, knob value to aux D. So C and D, they do the same thing. They just move the value to different aux rows. So let's use knob value to aux C here, and on aux C we have to add something for that to affect. So let's go back to set step value and set note. So already ganged. Let's change this to G4 again. So none of these are on yet. Let's select knob A. There's 4 knobs you can select, A and B, and knob 1 and 2. So we're going to do knob A first, which is this one right here. So now what's happening is every note, the aux is taking the value from knob A and sending it to aux C, which is set note. So if I change A, it's changing the note. You don't have to have it on every step. So if we turn these off, the knob is only affecting 9 to 16 now, and 1 to 8 is playing the original note we have here, which is G4. But we can change those obviously. Oh, that's ganged. Let's ungang that. Oh, wait. I have set note here. Let's turn that off for. There we go. So now, the knob grab is affecting notes 9 to 16, and notes 1 to 8 are being played by the normal notes. So knob A and B, basically, they work exactly the same. To use knob 1 and 2, they're in the track control values. Let me just change it to knob 1 here. We're using knob A currently. So let's just gang the last ones and change this to track knob 1 there. We're going to the track control values, and there's knob 1. Let me delete that and add it again just to remind you how it works. The track control values you get into by in the track page. I made a whole video about that. Go and watch that video if you haven't already. To add a new one, we're gonna go to new page, shift and row, insert, value, track control. You see knob 1 and knob 2 are there. So knob 1 and knob 2 can be assigned to any of these 6 encoders. You can hear that's working there. So that's the knob grab. Now the knob grab, I'm using it to change note values, but it can change any aux. Let me show you another example that I've prepared earlier. Back to this. So what I've done now is I've assigned knob A to change the transpose of the whole scene. So we've got SH101, the Nord and the Pro one. If I change knob A, I'm moving the scene up. transposing it up. Now, one problem here is that the knob values go from 0 to 127. So you can't transpose the scene down below 0, even though you might want to. But you can get around that. This is the track I have the auxes on. Let's go to the pattern. So you can see here, aux D is set scene transpose. Aux B is grab value from knob A and send it to aux D. But aux C, I have add n to aux D. So what we do is that down minus 20. So now the range is from minus 20 up. So we can transpose minus 20 up to 107, which is that bit useless that high, but still get a decent range. So that's the knob grab. Once again, it can be assigned to any aux. You can change any aux with it. So we can change this to, say, doesn't have to be a global one either, it can be anyone, but I'm just in the global one right now. I'm going to change it to set tempo. And we'll turn off aux C. So if we turn this now, I'm changing the tempo with knob A. That's pretty fun. And you could have knob A assigned to one thing and knob B assigned to a different one. And knob 1 and 2 assigned to 2 other ones as well on different tracks. So that can be a lot of fun for live improvisation, or as I like to call it, messing around. The two other ones, knob value to velocity, knob value to length, they're pretty self-explanatory, so you can try them out yourself. I don't need to give you an example of those. The next group of aux events we're going to look at is also knob related. It's the knob mask group. Let's go into my SH101 pattern here and go to aux A and go to knob mask. Now, this is the biggest group of aux events. There's 24 in total, and we're going to just look at the first 15. The last 9 work with accumulators, and we're going to look at accumulators later, but the first 15 is what we're going to look at right now. So let's choose the very first one here, and it asks us to select a knob. So we have 4 options, 1, 2, which are the track control ones, and A and B. I'm going to go with A. It's all the same, really. So what does this mean? Basically, this means the gate will be masked unless the value of knob A is greater than the value of the aux I set. So what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. Let's set all these aux values to 63. So now my knob A here is at 0. So 0 is less than 63. So the gate's not going to play. It's going to be masked. I turn the knob to the middle. There, it's just past 63. So right over to the right is 127. 0 up to 127. You'll hear it's playing now once it gets past 63, which is the value I've selected here. So if I change that to 100, let's say 126, now all these notes will only play if the knob A value is greater than 126, and that's only right at the end at 127. So all the rest of the way, you're not going to hear the gate. It's going to be masked. So that's what's happening there. So you can be creative as well. You can do something like this. So now, when I'm down here at 0, nothing's going to play. If I start turning it up, the first few are going to start playing, because the value of my knob is going to be more than 8. It's going to be more than 15, but it's going to be less than all these, so these are not going to play. So I keep raising the value of the knob. We're going to hear more of the pattern. And if I go right down to 127, we hear all of it. There we go. And we can do it the other way around, just for fun. So now when it's over here at 0, and we start bringing it in, we're going to start hearing the end of the pattern first. And the more we raise the value of knob A, we'll hear the pattern more of the middle and then the start, because it's the highest value here. So once we're at 127, now we can hear all the pattern. So that's the basics behind this aux event. So let's have a look at the next one. Let's just first of all change this down to 0 there. And let's go to the second one. The second one is also mask gate. Let's select knob A again. And let's move this up to 63. So what this is mask the gate, don't play the gate until the value of knob A is near the value selected here. So the value selected here is 63, and when it says near, it means within plus or minus 1. So that means none of the gates will play unless A knob is near 63, which is the middle. So now it's playing. If I move it over here, it'll be off. Move it over the other side, it'll be off. But in the middle, which is 63, it'll be on. Once again, we can move all these auxes around. So now, if I move it, we'll start hearing bits of the pattern as I move it along, as it gets near in value to each step. But it has to be within +3 of this number, so sometimes it can be hard to get it exactly because I'm not seeing the value of this. But that's basically how it works. If we move all these to 1, then I'll hear the pattern when I turn this right over here, because that's at 0 now, which is near 1. So that's that aux event, and let's go to the next one. First one, the middle one, and now this one, which is the same as the first one except reverse. So let's go to 63 again. And what this means is the gate will be masked, it won't play, unless the value of knob A is less than the number on the aux. Now I've got 63 in all the auxes, so A is turned up to 127. If I turn it under 63, we hear the pattern again. So this third one is the same as the first one, except it's the knob A has to be less than instead of greater than. And you can see that if we change to the first one. You can see it just changed to greater than. The middle one is near, tilde, and the third one is less than. So that's the first 3 mask gates. The second 3 are exactly the same, except instead of masking the gate, it masks the tie. If you have any ties on your pattern, it's the same again. Less, greater than, near, less than. And then also we have the same 3 again, except this time it works on aux B, greater than, near, less than, aux C, greater than, near, less than, and aux D, greater than, near, less than. And it masks aux D, which means it turns off whatever is on aux D. So let's have a look at that, because that starts getting interesting. Let's get rid of that menu. Here's one I prepared earlier, a couple of knob mask examples. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, it's my SH101. If I turn it past 63, it's muted my SH101, and now it's playing my Pro 1 on channel 4, track 4. Because what I've done is, I've got the, let's go to, yeah, we're on SH101. I've got the mask gate here. The value has to be less than 63 to hear the SH101. So there we go. But on the Pro one, I've got the value is greater than 63 and we'll hear the Pro one. So less than 63, SH101. Greater than 63, Pro one. So obviously we can get more interesting results here now. Let's go to my second example. So what I've done here is I have a slope of values come in. So at the very left, we'll hear the SH101. As I turn it to the right, we'll hear less SH101 notes and more Pro 1 notes until finally we hear all Pro 1. Pro 1's coming in. SH101 is coming out. In the middle you hear a bit of them, and now more Pro 1. Bit of SH101. SH disappearing now. And now all Pro 1 now. So that's pretty cool. Now, my third example is the SH101. And I'm starting to turn it right. Whoa, what's happening here? What's happening is I'm introducing random notes. Let's look at what's going on. The mask is masking aux-D. So when I have it turned to the very left, aux-D is completely off. Aux-D is going to randomize the note. But when I start turning the knob from left to right, it's going to start letting aux-D come in more and more. And the notes become more random. Let's just look at the slope here. You can see what's happening. So the more I turn it, the more random the notes get. And right on 127, the notes are all random. So that's pretty cool. Now my final example. SH101 playing. I'm turning it. Now we're hearing the SH101 get random, but also the Pro 1 starts coming in and that's random. Now it's mixing between the gates. And now we're hearing bits of each one randomized. And then if I turn it to the right, we're hearing the Pro 1 less randomized and the notes more often. With tiny bits of the SH101 still in there, but disappearing. I'll show you what I've done to get that going. Yeah, SH101 track. So at the mask gate and the mask aux-D. So the gate is being masked and the randomized note is being masked and being unmasked as I turn them. The gate gets masked, the aux-D gets unmasked and the gate gets more masked. You can see the slopes there. That's the gate being masked more as I turn it and the random notes come in more as I turn it. And I have the opposite setup on the Pro 1. Less Pro 1 notes over here because the mask is on. More Pro 1 notes because the mask is off. But more random Pro 1. But less random Pro 1 over to the right. So it takes a little bit to get your head around that, but playing around with this, it's a lot of fun. You can, like everything, you can put, I just have randomized note in there. You can go through any aux event and you can have it affected by the knob. I can have one knob affect a lot of different stuff on a lot of different tracks to get some crazy things going. So that is the knob mask, the first 15 basically of the knob masks, because some of them are double up right? I don't have to show you mask B, mask C, mask D. All do the same thing. It's just they're working on different aux rows. So we don't have to go through every single one. They all do the same thing. I wanted to show you the knob mask tie just to complete this part of it. So like the gate mask and the aux mask, the tie mask works exactly the same. So what's happening here is the tie is being masked unless the knob value of A is greater than the aux value that I've set. And I've got some different aux values on different steps. So as I turn up knob A, we'll hear the slide come in more on each step that I have a slide on, which is most of them. You can hear there's loads more slide action now. So, just like the other ones, you can get creative with this. You can have slides on different tracks all being affected by knob A for maximum acity slide action. So that's the mask tie for the knob mask. So we've covered all the first 15 pretty much, and the accumulator ones we're going to come back to when I talk about accumulator auxes later on. The next group of aux events we're going to look at are the pattern control aux events. So I have my SH101 pattern here again. I've got some random mask gate just on the last 3 notes so they don't play all the time. Let's turn them down even a bit. There we go. Okay, just to keep it a little bit funky. And so that's on aux A. Aux B is free. So let's go to the pattern control group. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 auxes in the pattern control group. There's set last step absolute, set last step relative, set normal time base, set triplet time base, and set direction. So let's go for set direction first because it's very easy to show this happening. What this does is basically sets the direction here that you can set manually. Forward, reverse, A, B, alternative, pendulum, random, Brownian, and either way. In my last video I explained what all of those do, but we're gonna get a little taste again. So on aux B, currently when you set it up, it defaults to forward. So if I turn that on, it won't do anything, it'll just keep making it go forward. But if we change it, so now it's reversing. Once it went over that step, it reverses. So we actually, let's set this to forward. And let's set the 13th one to reverse A, yeah. So now what's happening is step 1 is set to forward, and then step 13 is set to reverse A. So it gets the 1, it plays forward, it gets the 13, it goes back. So it's like a pendulum, except it's in between, it doesn't go right to the end. That's pretty interesting for varying your patterns. We can change that to either way. So it's gonna stay down here for a while, but then if it ever makes it up past to hit 1 again, it'll go forward. That's quite interesting. Like all other aux events, this can be messed with. So let's go to aux A and change this to random mask aux B. So now we can turn these steps off and we'll turn this one on. So random mask aux B, not random. There we go. So every time it hits step 1 now, it won't always change to forward direction. There's a 60% chance it'll change to forward direction. And every time it hits 13, step 13, it'll always go either way. So that is the set direction aux event. I just want to go through another pattern control set direction example just to remind people that with the aux events, they can go on every single step of a pattern. So in this row, I have set direction, but I can have a different direction set on every single step, which is not musically very useful, but it's just a reminder that you can do this with aux events. So with other aux events, that's more useful. With the set direction one, it can get a bit crazy, but let's have a go anyway, because it's fun. So right here, here usually with the auxes, once again, you'll just see numbers because they Colin can only fit a number under that bar. But if you switch to the step view, we can see which one we have selected. So these are all the ones up here again: forward, reverse, alternate, pendulum, random, Brownian, and either way. We all know what they do because we watched my previous video. So let's put forward as the last step would be good. So every time it gets to the last step, it'll reset to forward. And on the first step, we'll put random. So now, what's going to happen is, every time it hits the first step, the pattern's going to change to random. Every time it hits the last step, the pattern's going to change to forward. However, when it goes forward, it'll play the first step and that'll set it to random again. So, random, maybe we don't put it on the first step. Maybe we put it on the second last step. Might be interesting. See, this is how you explore how all this stuff works, just by messing around. Alright, so now it's random again. Now, during its random, if ever it hits the 16th step, it'll change to forward, and it'll go forward from 1 until it hits 15, where it goes random again. Random currently. And there, it went forward again. So that one's pretty interesting, actually. I like that one. Any Matthew Johnson fans out there? If you need a Matthew Johnson knockoff for your label, sign me up. Did you hear my delay there? When you press play, the delay is synced to the Cirklon. It takes a minute to get playing at the right speed. It's an Empress ecosystem. I thoroughly recommend it, by the way. But anyway, I digress. We're gonna look at another pattern control aux event, but first of all, I just want to show you something I've got set up here. So for the percussion, I've got my analog rhythm, and I have a CK pattern, but it's just doing the kick drum, and I thought I'd vary it a bit. So I have a P3 pattern over here, and this is just doing the open hat of the rhythm, but I've got a random mask gate, so the hat doesn't play all the time, so it's a nice unexpected hat every so often. And then on this track 13, I've got the analog rhythm as well, different pattern set up to play the rim shot, low tom, high tom, and the clap. And I've got a random mask gate on aux A. So those particular pieces of percussion don't play all the time either, just every so often. So it's a nice variation there with just a 1 bar pattern for the rhythm. So that's send into rimshot, clap, and toms. And this track is sent into the open hat. What I could have done is just done a long CK pattern with all these changes in it, but this way is interesting if you just want the changes to be unexpected, and it's very quickly to set. It's very quick to set up. But anyway, let's go back to my SH101. Oh, by the way, I've got another P3 pattern here for the Nord. And that's got a chord going on. That's random velocity and random mass gate as well. So that's going to happen every so often at a random velocity, just for atmosphere. Okay, back to the SH101, which is the main thing going on here. We have a nice pattern of notes, which we can see there. And we're going to go into the pattern control group, and we're going to look at last step absolute. Now this pattern, what it does is it specifies which step is the last step of your pattern. Now you can do this manually, as you know from my previous videos, which you've all watched multiple times. If you hold down last, and let's say I press 13. 13 is now the last step of the pattern. It's only playing to 13 and then it goes back to 1. Let's reset that back to 16. See the Cirklon as well, that resets it for you, as we heard there, but you can turn that off. Once again, detailed in my previous videos. Not going to go into it now. But that last step, you can also do that with an aux event. Aux events are great, aren't they? So if you have, you can put it here. So now I've got a last step absolute on step 1, which tells the pattern that the pattern is only 12 steps long. So it gets to 12, starts again. If I change that to 14, it goes to 14. If I change that to 15, it goes to 15. Now even when I turn it off, it's set the pattern to 15 steps, and it'll stay playing at 15 steps even if I turn the aux off. But if I stop the Cirklon and press play again, the aux is still off. So now the pattern's reset to 16 steps again, which is its default. So that's last step absolute. You can put it, once again, you can put it anywhere. So we can have a step here that says it's 2. So what will happen there is when I press play, it'll play from 1 up to 9. And when it gets to 9, it'll say, oh wait, last step is number 2. It'll go back here. And now it's just playing 1 to 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So 2 isn't very musically useful. Let's go to 13 and we'll set it to 9. So it'll play 1 to 13. When it hits 13, the last step will be then 9. There. So that's last step absolute. The maximum step it can be is 16, which it won't get to currently because I set it to 9, so it'll never get to 13. But if we press stop and play, it resets to 16 anyway, but you can set it to 16 in last step absolute. So there's another, let's turn this off, and let's just reset these down to 0 just for to make it look good. So we're gonna have a look at last step relative. So what last step relative does is it changes the last step as you would expect, but it changes it by a value, pluses or minuses to it. So if we go 16, no, because it'll only do that once. No, if we go to 1, we go -1. So now every time it plays step 1, it minuses 1 from how long the pattern is. So it's getting shorter and shorter. If 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So now, well, it resets when we start and stop again, but we can have a bit of fun with this. So what we can do is change this back to last step absolute and turn that off, and on 16 we put it to step 1. So when it plays, I had another, so I had that on and I had that on. Right, so now when it plays, it's going to get to 16 and it's going to go back to 1. But what if that's on aux A and aux B, so that's last step absolute in aux A. Aux B, we have last step relative, and on the first step we have it +1. So now what's going to happen is it's going to go to 16, but every time it passes 1, it's going to add 1 to it. 9, 10, 11, 12. See what's happening? 14. But what happens when it gets to 16? Gets reset to 1 again. But then it keeps adding 1 to it. So it'll keep doing this, which is quite a groovy pattern. Almost at 16. Back to 1. But then 1 keeps adding to it. So that'll keep going, and it's pretty good already, but you can mess around with this a bit more. On aux C, which is free, I'm gonna add a transpose by N. And let's set this. Let me turn these on. So now it'll keep transposing the pattern as it plays further down. It'll transpose each note, which makes it sound pretty good as well. So that's last step relative. Works very well with last step absolute. Okay, we have another SH101 pattern here. I'm going to show you a bit more about the set direction, just another example of set direction and set last step of the pattern control aux group. I have set direction set up on aux row A, and on the first step I have it set to forward. And you're probably thinking, it's already going forward. Why do you want to make it go forward? Just bear with me. On the last row, aux D, I have last step absolute set up on step 1, and I have it set to 16. And you're thinking, why have you got it set to 16? The pattern's already 16 steps on, it's not doing anything, just you wait. On aux row C, I have randomize aux D set up. And on step 1, I have it set to -16. So let's turn that on. And what that's doing is, every time step 1 plays, it's gonna randomize the last step absolute setting. So the last step of the pattern is gonna keep changing every time it hits step 1, which makes for a nice effect. And we can add some bonus material in with our aux row A. On the very last step, I'm gonna set it to reverse. Now, what's going to happen is it's not going to get to the last step a lot of the time, because it just did there though. So what's happening is the last step absolute keeps changing the pattern length from between 1 and 16. So whenever the pattern eventually does make it to 16, it'll then reverse and it'll go back to 1, and when it hits 1, it'll set the direction of the pattern to forward again. But also the last step absolute, we'll be changing it again. So it won't reverse a lot, but it will every so often. Oh, I just did there again. And all the other times it'll go forward, but the length of the pattern won't be 16 notes all the time. That's random between 1 and 16. So that's a pretty interesting variation, I think. Couple that with an open hat through a phaser, and you're laughing. You are literally laughing at a Cirklon sequencer. Okay, that's enough of that. I thought I'd give the SH101 a break, so I've turned on the Minimoog, the original Minimoog, which sounds great, obviously. What's going on here? I've got one pattern going on here on my Minimoog, but also I've got another track over here, which is no instrument, but it has one pattern. And what that pattern is doing is on Aux row B has set scene transpose, which we talked about already. It's on step 1, but it's just set to 0. It's not transposing. However, the aux above it is randomizing aux B. Aux A is randomizing aux B, and that's randomizing it between 0 and -4. So the scene's gonna jump around between 0 and -4. Now this pattern, I've changed the time base from 16 to 8, which means it's going half the speed of the BPM compared to my other pattern here, which is the time base is set to 16. So it's playing the notes as 16th notes. We talked about time base, well, I did anyway, in a previous video, and we're going to talk about it again now because the next aux event we're going to look at is in the pattern control group. It's the last one in pattern control we're going to look at, and it's, well, the last two, and it's set norm time base and set triplet time base. So what it does is it changes the time base for you as an aux event. So let's go to set norm time base. Let's just go back to our notes here. I'm just going to show you. Obviously, we can set it manually here. By default, it's set to 16. The normal ones are 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Let's go to 8, half speed, and then 4, even slower, quarter. No, not a quarter. Anyway, the music aficionados who do music theory, which I've forgotten, I used to know, they can correct me on this. But anyway, 32, it's going to be faster, and 64 will be annoying. And then these ones are the triplets with the T after them. This last one is polyrhythm, but the aux events don't address polyrhythm, so I'm going to ignore that today. Anyway, back to 16, but we've got our aux event set up, set norm time base. It's off at the moment, but it says 32. So I turned it on at 32. Let's change that to 16. Let's change to 16. Let's put one here and change this to 8. So what's going to happen now is it'll play it as 16ths for this much of the pattern, and when it gets to this part of the pattern, when it gets to step 8, it'll change the time base 8. But step 1, it'll change it back to time base 16 because I've put it there. Let's move that out of the way. Sometimes you can't see the text in the video with the when it's highlighted, so I'll just move it out of the way for you there. But you can see on this step, aux is 16, and on this step, aux is 8. And once again, because it's an aux event, if you wanted, well, I've got it on aux row A now, but let's remove it from aux row A. Okay, it's removed from aux row A. Let's put it on aux row D. Pattern control, set norm time base. And on aux row C, we can randomize that. Randomize aux row D. So between +1 and +4, and then we turn this on. Every time I hit step 1 now, it'll randomize between 4 of the normal time bases. You just saw it go to 32s there now. I think that's 8s or 4s. It's pretty slow. So that's the set norm time base. Set triplet time base does as you would expect, except you can select between the triplet ones. Actually, let's set our triplet time base on a different aux row, and we'll put it on 9, and we'll have it go 8 triplets whenever it gets to 9. But then when it gets to step 1, it'll randomize between a few of the normal ones until it gets to step 9, where it will change to 8 triplets. So that makes for an interesting pattern. Obviously, sometimes the results aren't as musical as I like, but there's stuff in here you can use if you program it properly. It's all like Lego bricks. You just stick them together in different ways and you'll end up with a pretty cool house. Lego house tune. So that's the time bases. That was the triplet time base and the normal time base. And that is the end of the pattern control aux group. Quite an interesting one. Especially I use the last step, absolute and relative. I use them the most. They're very useful. I have an ulterior motive for introducing the Minimoog instead of the SH101 here. It's because the Minimoog has a CV in for the filter. And if you remember from my track control value video, you can send CV out and you can use knob A or knob B to control it, or the track control values to control it. But you can also control this in the aux event with a CC. So I've set up, let's show you here. Normally we can select any CC we want from 0 up to 127, and I've named CC1. I've just renamed it VCF so we can see it there. So I can use an aux row to send CC to the Minimoog. Now, the astute amongst you will have figured out where I'm going next. Yes, you can change CCs using aux events. So let's go to Randomize. Remember, my CC is on row B, aux event, aux row B. So we're on aux row A now. We're gonna randomize aux row B. So let's gang this. Let's turn that up to 45, and let's go to aux B and turn these on. There we go. So aux A is sending random values between 0 and 65 to aux B, and aux B is sending those values as CC messages out the Cirklon. Well, in this instance, it's the Cirklon CVIO, but you can send CC messages out MIDI ports as well to any of your synths that accepts CC messages, and you can randomize and do stuff with them with the aux events. Now, the CC has one strange exception to our original rule. I'll show you now. What was our original rule? Our original rule was that, let's just change that to 0. Our original rule was that the aux events are processed from the top down. So aux A can affect aux B, but aux B cannot affect aux A. And likewise, aux C cannot affect aux B. However, the CC is not technically an aux event, so it bypasses this rule. And what this means is that in aux C, I can add a randomize aux event to randomize aux B. And that's aux B is not an aux event now, it's a CC event. So aux C will be able to send the messages to the CC on aux B. However, if aux B was any of the aux events that is not CC, then aux C will not be able to send to aux B. Little bit complicated, but basically if you do this by accident, if you'd set this up before, you probably think, hey, that Split Radix guy is completely lying about that rule. Because I've got it to work, look. I've got randomize aux B on aux C and it's working. No, the only reason it's working is because aux B is a CC event. If this was an aux event, it would not work. So that's the weird rule bypassing ability of the CC. It's just the way the CC is programmed. Colin explained it to me once and I completely forgot 5 minutes later. But there you go. You can modify CCs with aux events. So that's opens up a whole new world for a lot of your synths. And you can do things like randomize, random, mask, aux B. So it'll only send the CC. Let's have that at 100 and we'll turn all these to 0 just to show you. So what's happening now is the CC will be sent and let's just go back to randomize. So the CC, there's a 100% chance the CC will send on steps 1 to 8, and there's a 0% chance the CCs will send on 9 to 16. So whatever the CC value is on step 8, that'll be the CC value for the rest of the steps. You can kind of hear that happening. It's modulating for the first 8, and then it doesn't modulate for the last 8. But it plays the same CC that was on 8 for the last 8 steps. That's just another example of how the random mask works on CC, and the randomize also works on CC. So playing with CCs. Good luck with that one. It's a fun one. We're taking a slight detour from the synths here. That's the Electron machine drum you're hearing. Electron's best product they ever made. And I've got a pattern here set up with the machine drum as the instrument. Well, I'm going to set up a pattern, rather. Now, this pattern is completely blank. There's no notes or anything. All the sequence you're hearing is programmed into the machine drum itself. But I just wanted to show you this next group of aux events we're going to look at called Midi Send. Now, these are not technically aux events. Like the CCs, they're actually MIDI messages, but we use them on the aux row and we can manipulate them with aux events. So first of all, we have NRPN, then we have Send MIDI Aftertouch, Send MIDI Pitch Bend, Send MIDI Program, Send MIDI Clock. Now, apologies to the one person who asked me about MIDI NRPN already. I'm not going to cover that today because I don't know anything about MIDI NRPN. I have to dig into it. I've tested it once on a synth and I've never used it, so I'm not an expert, but I'll dig into that, and that'll be for a future video. But we're going to look at the other four today. And the first one we're going to look at is send MIDI clock. So what this does is it sends a start, a stop, or a continue message to the device you have connected to this track. So if I move it to stop, there, see, the machine drum stopped. And I can put a start here. So what's happening is the machine drum gets a MIDI start, but then it gets a MIDI stop on step 1, MIDI start in step 9, MIDI stop in step 1. And another thing you can do is you can do another MIDI start, and it starts it again. That's pretty interesting. So that's good for turning on and off your drum machines in tracks. Then you want them turned on. You can have them turn on in weird steps like step 7. And because it's on an aux row, we can manipulate it with aux events. So let's go to Randomize and let's go to random aux B. And if we put this to 1, it'll randomize between starting and stopping. There we go. Stopped. Started. Stopped. And so on. And you can also put start and stop messages on different keys, and you can mask gate them, mask the aux, etc. So that's the send MIDI clock aux event. Not really an aux event, but yeah, kind of. Next, in the MIDI Send group, we're going to have a look at Send MIDI Aftertouch. Not many of my synths support Aftertouch, but one of them does. I have a Moog one, which we're hearing right now. We're hearing a chord being played, and I'm randomizing the note on step 1 plus 5, so between a maximum of 5 semitones of randomness there. So to send MIDI Aftertouch, what does that do? Well, I've set up Aftertouch on the Moog, so one of the oscillators will be pitch bent up, but not all of them, by Aftertouch if it gets an Aftertouch message. So we're just going to send an Aftertouch message now. And I'm going to change this to 18. It's actually, oh, there we go, we can hear it. But I'm going to reset it to 0 on step 1. And on step 3, I'm going to set it to 12. Oh. So you can hear that. It's sending, it's not a beautiful sound, but it's sending the Aftertouch on the step to the Moog one. And obviously, like all the other things on aux rows, this can be manipulated with other aux events. There we go. So that's Aftertouch. I don't really use Aftertouch that much because most of my synths don't support it. But if you have Aftertouch on something, you can send Aftertouch signals with this aux event. Next up, what do we have? MIDI Send. We have, I'm going to look at Send MIDI Program. It's a pretty easy one. It sends a program message. So I have a patch on 0 and a patch on 1. So let's put this here on step 9 and change that to 1. You heard that change? So that's my patch on 1, but let's go to... We always have to randomize it, don't we? It's the nature of the game. So if we go back to this and set it to 0, it'll reset it. And we randomize that, so it's going to be either 0 or 1. every so often. There we go. So we're randomizing the program message. Now, obviously, if I was smart and I'd prepared better, I would have lots of amazing Moog 1 programs on the first 64 or whatever slots that we could randomize through. But I don't have it set up like that currently. So we're hearing 2 patches. Apologies for that. But obviously you get the idea. You'll be able to use aux events to change the MIDI program number. And you can mask it, things like that. So that's sending MIDI program. So the last of the MIDI Send kind of aux events we're going to look at is the Send MIDI pitch bend, which is there. But we're going to put that on aux for reasons which you should know by now why I'm doing that pitch bend. Just before we do that, actually, I just want to point out something. I've got the Mini Moog playing here, playing this funky, playing these notes, and I have the same notes being played by the SH101. However, they're down, I think, 2 octaves or so. But I've random masked gated, so there's just a 10% chance each note will play. So you'll hear that bass line come in every so often, but not all the time. But it's the exact same pattern, so the note will always fit. So that's an example of using random mask gate for some interesting pattern creation. Let's go back to our Mini Moog. And, first of all, I'll show you. I've got the Mini Moog connected via the CVIO of the Cirklon. So if we go into menu, more, CVIO, you'll see I have bend set to 1. So if I'm gonna play with the pitch bend. The max up and down it'll go is 1 semitone. I've got it set up like that on purpose. So let's go into the pattern. And we have set MIDI pitch bend here. Let's just gang every note. And I'll just show you it in action. You can hear it. Pitch bending up and down. So that's the maximum amount I've got set up in the CVIO. It's like when you're on your MIDI Send and it says, how much pitch bend do you want? Do you want crazy amounts or just a little bit? You select a little bit. That's what I've done in the CVIO. We can go down as well. So this pitch bend, it doesn't seem that useful at the start because it's slow and it's static. But it is useful. And what it's useful for is, what I like to do is we randomize aux D. So now, let's just have it on the notes, so when the note is not playing, the pitch is not moving. So we've got an interesting kind of micro-tuned thing going on. Where it's adding to the pitch bend. Now, this is one thing you'll notice with Randomize. You can randomize it up, so it's between 0 and plus 127, or you can randomize it so it's between 0 and minus 127, but you can't do both on the same aux row. You can get around that though, I'll show you how. So currently I'm just randomizing, it'll only randomize up, it won't randomize my pitch bend down. But what we do is, we do another randomize aux D here, doing the same thing. And in this one, we'll randomize it to go down. Now, the smart among you will remind me, first of all, just have it on every note that's playing. You can see what note is on by these lights down here. So I'm just matching it so that when the note is off, there isn't another pitch bend. Now, the auxes is not going to let aux B do anything because it's below aux B. But what we do then is we add another aux row to mask aux C. And I'm going to set that to 50%. No, not randomize aux C, random mask aux C. There we go. So now what's happening here is 50% of the time for each step, randomize the aux row C will not randomize aux D. It'll not happen, and when it doesn't happen, aux B will get through. So aux B is the minus random and aux C is the plus random. So that means the minus and the plus randoms are both getting through now to our aux D row, which is sending the MIDI pitch bend, which is a slight pitch bend, but it is there. We can demonstrate that further. We go back to here and I set that to 12. You can hear the notes all over the place now. Change that back to 1. Even 2 is a little bit too much. Yeah, there we go. 1 is good. So that's good for, you can do some micro tuning with this. Have your micro tuning turn on and off. You can randomize your tuning. It's very useful. And that is the Send MIDI pitch bend, almost aux event. The next group of aux events we're going to look at are the repeat aux events, which are in here. There are 17 of these, but a couple of them are pretty similar. And the first one we're going to look at is the one right down the bottom called step repeat multiplied by n, which is step repeat number. So let's select that. Now, before we do this, I just want to point out, did you hear that synth? That's the Minimoog. That's the one that we're going to be messing with. And I have the other patterns playing on purpose so you can hear this pattern being changed by this aux event. So, this is the step repeat by n aux event. And what it does is, it just repeats the step, which is pretty simple. But it has some interesting consequences. So I'm going to set this on. It's not repeating it at the moment. Let's put it up 1. Now, it plays the step. Instead of playing it once like it normally does, it plays it twice. But that means that this pattern now has 17 steps in the pattern, because it plays 1, 2, and then it plays the rest, which is another 15. So that's 17 in total. So if I put this up to 5, now there's 21 steps in my pattern. Let's put that down to 2 again. So if we do this, right, let's put last step as 15. So my pattern is only now 15 steps long. However, this is going to repeat the first step twice. That makes 16, so it should fit in with everything else. And it does. Once again, like all the other auxes, this can be randomized with other auxes and masked and everything. But because I'm an idiot, I put it on aux A first. I should have put it on a lower down aux so I can mess with it. Let's put it on aux D, and on aux A, let's change this to random mask, so we can just turn on and off each repeat. And what we'll do is we'll have this repeat happening 80% of the time, this repeat happening 42% of the time, and this repeat happening 22% of the time. And these are the amounts of repeats it's going to be. So let's put that to 2. Let's put that to 3. And let's put that to 4. And let's play. So remember that the random mask aux D is going to let that repeat happen 82% of the time. It's going to let this repeat happen 42% of the time. And let this repeat only happen 22% of the time. Let's turn this down. That's pretty interesting. So it's throwing that pattern out of sync melodically. I think it works pretty good. Let's randomize the values as well. Randomize aux D. So I thought it's 7. This let's put them on. Ah, okay, so we're already seeing it in action. It's randomly adding to the repeats. Also, the random mask is also there, so the repeats are not going to always happen, and when they do happen, the amount of repeat is going to be random as well, to a certain amount. So that is the step repeat aux event. One other thing that I should have mentioned earlier probably, but when we have a pattern and we have, like this Moog one right now, we have notes in it, we have velocity, we have 3 random mask, well, we have 3 aux rows set up: random mask aux, randomize aux, and set pattern repeat. And on those rows, we have a few of the steps are on, and there's some numbers in the steps, and we can add more. Like that. This is not going to do anything. I just want to show you that if we want to clear all the values of everything, you hold down delete and press pattern, and then you have an option to clear the pattern. So we hit enter for delete again. Now what we've done is we've cleared every value. All the values are turned off. However, the rows we've specified, when I've loaded random mask aux in there, and I've loaded randomize aux, and I've loaded step repeat, those are still in there, but just all the values are gone. So you can see there's no steps are on, and all the numbers are set to the default. For the CC it's 0, for random aux it's 0, for random mask it's 0, and for step repeat multiplied by n, the default is 1, so they're all set to 1. And the notes are all set to C3, and velocity is all set to 127, etc. So doing delete pattern, that'll clear all the values, but you won't have to reload your aux each time. So that's handy for when you've been messing around with stuff and you say, right, I'm going to do it all again, but you don't have to, you don't want to keep loading the auxes every time. So that said, let's get on with some more auxes. I'm actually just going to clear these ones out. I just usually set them back to MIDI CC just to avoid confusion. And the next repeat we're going to look at is this one right up the top. It's repeat by 2, note plus n. And what this does is, it's not an incredibly powerful one, but you might find some use for it. It's pretty simple. Let's put it in a note here. Let's put a note. Do you know what? We're gonna turn off the Nord and the SH101 because they're distracting me. Okay, so here's our note. Let me just turn off the delay so that doesn't confuse us either. Okay, nice clean Moog. So what this aux does, repeat by 2, note plus n. Wrong note, I'm an idiot. There we go. it splits the note in half and it plays it twice. So the pattern stays the same length, but it fits 2 notes in where there was 1 note already. And if I set the time base to 8, we'll hear it better. That's the pattern's playing half the speed it was, but that means we can hear this repeat easier. Let's go last and 8. So the pattern is only 8 steps long now. Right, so you can hear that repeating, but what does the plus n mean? Plus n is the note. So it'll be the second note. 4, 11, R down. That's 0. So that just specifies the second note, if it will go up or down. R can be the same. So the second aux event in the repeat group is almost exactly the same. It's repeat by 2, except instead of changing the note, changes the velocity of the note. So let's have a listen to that. I've got the Moog connected up in such a way that the velocity does affect it, so it's pretty slight, but we'll hear it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you can hear that it's a bit quieter. There's a VCA on the VCA in. You can adjust the. That's what I'm adjusting with this at the moment on the Moog. But you can hear that the velocity affects it, and if we had a synth that responded to velocity better, I could show you this. So let's just turn the velocity down on as. You can hear now the first note is quieter and the second note is louder. That's the step playing the first note and then adding 127 to the velocity for the second note. So that's the first 2 of these. Now the next 2 are exactly the same, except instead of repeating by 2, repeats by 3. And there's one for note, there's one for velocity as well. So let's just have a look at them. There we go. It's playing 3 notes and they're descending. R, you can make them ascend. And we have the same for velocity. I'm not going to show you that because it works the same as repeat by 2. We also have the same again, repeat by 4 for note and velocity. Let's make the time base even shorter so we can hear that easier. There we go. And you can make it go down. Down a bit more. Okay. So they're pretty simple. They're not incredibly complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 of those. Repeat 2, note velocity, repeat 3, note velocity, repeat 4, note velocity. Now the next few are almost exactly the same, except instead of repeat, they are prepeat. What does that mean? It's the same setup. Prepeat by 2, note for velocity, prepeat 3, note velocity, prepeat 4, note velocity. So we'll just go for 4. And what this is doing is let's just there we go. Change this back to we'll leave that at 4. It's playing the repeats before the note, so it's prepeating, which is a clever way of describing it. So the repeats come in first and then the note plays on the step. So you can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see the step plays at 5, but the repeats come in before the 5. And once again, like the others, you can make the note go down or up. Let's make it go right down. And let's speed it up a bit. See, when you have it playing at a 16 speed, you can hardly hear that. So that's more useful at slower speeds. There we go. Get a bit of delay going. Starting to sound good. That's the motto of my life, really. Bit of delay makes everything sound good. Good, 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 good. So, let me just turn that off a sec. Am I starting all these with so? I shouldn't be doing that. Now, the next aux events we're going to look at are, we're still in the repeat group. We've done most of the repeat group. Repeat by 2, repeat by 3, repeat by 4, and then pre-peat by 2, pre-peat by 3, pre-peat by 4. They're alright, they're not very exciting. You would be forgiven for thinking that also. The step repeat is a good one though, but these last 4, this is where the repeat magic happens, and this is one of my favorites out of all the aux events for having a jam on. The repeat end by length, catchy title, and these 3 underneath it, they're all connected to it, they work with it. Set repeat end note, set repeat by end velocity, and repeat end time base. So I'll show you how they work. First of all, we're gonna get a note on here. We have this is playing the Nord lead at the moment. We're gonna turn up the repeats. So what it's doing is, instead of fitting the repeat in the step like the previous ones, it's the repeat is relative to the length of the note. So there's 4 repeats there. The length of the note is currently 24 ticks. If I change this to 36, you can hear that the repeats are slower now. If I change this to 1, the repeats are slower again, and so on. Still a bit boring though, so let's add the second of this, the group here, which is, I went into Rndmz there and said repeat. There we go. So we have set repeat end note and set repeat end velocity. I'll show you velocity first because I just want to get it out of the way. I never really use it. You can hear the note, the velocity is decreasing because I've set it to -15. The velocity is going to keep going down in each repeat. Let's turn the repeats up a bit. Here there's 8 now. And they're fading away because of this aux, the set repeat end velocity. But we're gonna swap that with set repeat end note. And let's change this. Hang on. There we go. So now it's ascending. The note's obviously ascending 1 semitone each repeat. You can change that. So it's 2 semitones, 3 semitones, etc. I'm just gonna turn the filter down a bit so I'm not annoying everyone with the brightness of the synth. Once again, if we change the length, it changes how long it takes for the repeats to play. So what if we randomized the length of the note? There we go, now we're thinking. Oh, I randomized the note there, that's it. I want to randomize the length. There we go, randomize the length. So, let's turn this up. That's gonna add a bit of delay there. That's going to change the length of the note, and as you can hear, every so often, when the note changes, the length of time for the repeats to happen will change. There we go. Change that down to 4. We can change the length. That will make the length longer, and then the randomize will add to that. So it's going to be a bit longer now. Or we can make it, the randomize, make it shorter. Now, the repeat can get pretty wild. You can already hear the pitch goes right up. So we can add lots of notes. So let's turn the random off for a minute, just to listen what happens when we, just to hear what happens when we we got 106 repeats there. And the Nord can not handle them all. I think the MIDI note's getting too high. Let's set it down to 66. And that's... My Nord is kind of farting out there, but you get the idea. It can get pretty crazy. I'm lowering the amount of repeats, so there's 13 repeats now in a very short note length. And now it's longer, so we hear them better. And now let's randomize the length again. So, that's the repeat. Now, playing around with this, you can get very interesting musical results. Also, it really helps if you apply a scale as well. That makes things interesting. Let's set this to 24. You'll notice if you set it to a... There we go. Let's turn that on. And then we can randomize the note as well. We're getting some interesting patterns now. Okay, that's enough of that for the moment. Okay, I have another repeat example to show you. So first of all, I've got set repeat by n note at the top in aux A. That's making the note go up a semitone for every repeat. On aux B, I have randomize aux C minus 6. And on aux C, I have repeat n by length, and that's set to 15 repeats. But every step, it's going to be randomized by up to minus, down to minus 6, I suppose. So you can hear it. The repeats don't always, they cut off shorter sometimes. But there's one more aux event that's connected to all these that we have to check out. It's in repeat, it's near the bottom. It's called repeat by n time base. This one's pretty interesting. So currently all the repeats, the length of the note is 1, so all the repeats are fitting in with the 16th time base, but we can change that. There. So let's change it to 8 time base. And we can go to 4. And 2 and 1 obviously. But also we can go to the triplet. Oh well, 32 which is faster, and then 64. It's annoying. But the triplets are here as well, which is great. 8 is great, 8 triplet. Here we go. More repeats. Less repeats, hang on. There we go. Once again, all these can be changed by other aux events. So if I didn't want to randomize aux C, let's randomize aux D. So that's changing the time base every step, although it doesn't sound like it. Ah, there it is, it changed there. Let's make it a bit more random. So it's just gonna go from this time base 6 back to what all the other ones were. So that's pretty interesting. Now, you'll notice that we could fit more, if we could fit more in, we could make the pattern much more interesting. We can do that. And we can do that with aux redirects, which I've mentioned already, and I'm mentioning now, but we have to look at some other stuff first before we get to the aux redirects. There's one more repeat I just want to show you. Turn down the delay on that. Okay, there is one more repeat example I just wanted to show, just to give you an idea of how musical it can be, because it can be quite wild and annoying sometimes, but it can also be very musical. So on this pattern, I've got the Minimoog, and what I've got set up is the randomize note plus 13. That's just randomizing the note. Notice C2, so that'll be plus 13 above C2 randomly, between 0 and plus 13 randomly. The next aux B row, I've got randomize aux D, and aux D is my repeat by length, so that's my repeats, and aux B is going to randomize that plus 4, so it's going to be a few more delays every so often, a few less delays every so often, a few less repeats, I should say, not delays. And aux C is setting the note, so the notes each repeat is going to be plus 3 semitones above the previous one. So that's set up, and once again I'm going to force a scale. So it's starting to sound pretty musical. Next I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go to the Nord 2x, and I'm going to introduce an aux event I haven't talked about yet, but is integral to this demonstration, and we'll talk about it later anyway. It's the note grab, and what it does is I've set it up and it's grabbing the note from track 2, which is the Minimoog. So every random note that happens with the Minimoog, this track will take that random note and use it to play the Nord 2x. And also I've got the aux note relative set up, so it'll turn it into a chord, a 3-note chord with 2 aux note relatives on B and C. So this is what that sounds like. So it's going to fit every note, because the random note at the start of the Moog pattern, that note is going to be used to formulate the chord of the Nord 2x. And on this track, I have the SH101. Got the same thing set up. I'm grabbing a note from the Minimoog track, And this is going to play the SH101 bass line, which is also going to match. There we go. What else we got? Some 808. There, pretty good, isn't it? That's an example. That's just one note on the mini Moog pattern. There's one note at the start. And that note is being grabbed by one step on the Nord's 2x. And that note is also being grabbed by one step on the SH101 pattern. So one note on each pattern is doing all this. Once again, perfect for playing live. If you want to go off to the bar, have a drink, have this going. It's great. So we're over halfway through the list of Aux events. So it's a nice moment to have a breather. Go off and have a cup of tea or something stronger if you want. I think I might. Bottle of wine, that is. Alright. Back in a minute. Bye. The next, just adjusting the filter there. Let me try that again. The next aux event we're going to look at is the redirect aux. Inside the redirect aux group, there are 7 aux events. And first of all, we're going to look at the aux B equals CC number. Now this is the same as aux C equals CC number and aux D equals CC number. They just work on different rows. So I'm just going to do B, and then we'll pretend we've done C and D. They're exactly the same. So we're going to select aux B equals CC number, and we're going to talk about what it does. So currently, I've got on aux B, I've got an aux event set up, the set note aux event. What this is doing is it's setting the notes to these notes here. If I turn these aux events off, it'll just play the original notes that I have up here, which are very boring. It's just C2 all the way across. So I've just set up this as an example. That's why it seems silly. But let's turn on this again. These are our aux B set note aux events, changing the note for us as expected. Now on aux A, we put our special redirect. What this redirect does is it changes aux B, whatever's on row aux B, it changes that to a CC event. And I can pick the number of the CC event it is by turning the encoder up and down. So let's gang all these, and I'm going to turn it to 74 because I know that is the filter CC control of the Nord rack. So when I turn these on, this row, instead of sending notes, it's going to send CC 74. Let's see it in action. See? Because aux B is now sending CC messages instead of these set notes, the notes that are going to play are the ones, my original ones, because this aux has been defeated. And it's been changed by aux A to send CC information. So, if I turn half of these off, we're gonna hear the notes there. Now the notes are a bit quieter because the last note here is actually changing the filter. So let's turn that up. There we go. So this part of the pattern is, yeah, there we go, aux B. This part of the pattern is being affected by aux B setting the note, as we see in aux A, because it's off. And this part of aux A is on, so that's changing aux B and making it send these as CC74. So this is quite powerful. Also, you can have different CCs. So let's gang just these ones and move it down to, I know CC7 is, turn that filter there a bit, okay. There, that's better. So CC7 I know is the volume gain of the Nord. So it's changed now. We want to ungang this. Turn this up so we hear it. So what's happening now is the first half is changing the volume of the Nord, and the second is changing the filter. You can hear the filter changing just from 9 to 16. The volume change isn't as apparent, but it is happening, trust me. So that's the aux B changing it to CC aux event. Now the aux C does exactly the same thing, you just have to put it on aux C, or you just put that on aux B, and aux D does exactly the same thing, you put that on, well, you put that in any aux actually, A, B or C, and you can put C on A and B, you can only put B on A. Does that make sense? Makes perfect sense. Very powerful. Quite useful. The next redirect we're going to look at is a very powerful one that I use all the time. So it's very important to get a good grasp of this if you're going to be digging through aux events. Let's have a look at this pattern. So this is my Nord, just playing 2 notes, but I've got 4 rows of aux events set up. The first row is aux A is randomizing aux B. Aux B is doing the repeats, repeating by length, my favorite repeat. Third aux C, third aux row, is setting the note of each repeat down an octave, minus 12 semitones. And aux D is adding the second note of polyphony using the aux note relative. And that note of polyphony is plus 7 semitones above the root note. So if I turn this off, you just hear one note. Aux D is adding my second note. Remember that. Okay, that's gotta be one to remember. So now, what I want to do is I want to affect this further, but all my aux rows are used up. What I want to do is I want to change aux D, the value of this. So instead of 7, it is 4. I want that to change, but I don't want to change it manually because I'm lazy. So how do we change that with an aux event? We go to a new track. Here's a new track. No instrument, you don't need an instrument. Let's create a new P-tree pattern. There we go. Now, you can send multiple tracks to one synth. I could select the Nord here and start sending more aux events, but I don't want to do that. I want to specifically change one that's here. So we're going to use the redirect for that. And the redirect we're going to use in here, redirect aux, the last one here, auxes to track N. This one is the powerful one. So my Nord is on track 9. So I'm going to change this to 9. Look. 9. And yeah, these are the 2 steps. Now, first of all, just want to remind people, I can change these to any track. Each step can send different things to different tracks. But we're just going to work on one track right now to keep things relatively simple. Now, the thing I want to send is I want to set the step value of aux on my next track. I want to lower the pitch by -3. There, you can hear that's working now. So what's happening is, aux A says, send everything to track 9 on these two steps. Aux B is not doing anything, but it would go to track 9 if there was anything there. Aux C is not doing anything, it would go to track 9 if there was something there. And aux D is sending change aux D in track 9 by -3. So, if we go back here, we can see if I mute track 8, the auxes stop working on track 9 and the notes change back. Now, what if I don't want this change to happen all the time? I want to random mask aux D so it doesn't do a -3 every time, just does it sometimes. Here's what I would do. I would go to Randomize and I'd go to random mask aux D. But I'm making a mistake here. I'm doing it on purpose. See if you can figure out what I'm doing wrong. So I'm gonna set that to 30, so it's only gonna happen 30% of the time. And I'm gonna set that to 30, so it only happens 30% of the time. But now what we're hearing is the note, the polyphony note, is not playing 30% of the time. So what did I do wrong there? What happened is I was under the impression that my aux C here would affect my aux D there, but it won't because I'm redirecting everything to track 9. So this aux C, instead of random masking this row, it's random masking this row in track 9, and this row is adding the note of polyphony. I don't want that. So I made this mistake when I was first messing around with these auxes, and I swear to God, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I was pulling my hair out. But what I was doing wrong is I was redirecting this to track 9. So if we want to do what I want to do, here's what you do. Let's remove this. Now what we do is we move the redirect to aux B instead. Redirect aux. This is to track N. Change this to 9. Whoops. Went into track mode by accident there. And on aux A, we go to our randomize and we random mask gate aux D. Set this to, let's set it to 50 just so we hear it more often. And we can hear it's working already. So let me explain what's happening here. What I've done is, I've moved this random mask gate up to aux A. So that's going to work on aux D. Aux B then redirects everything below it. So it redirects aux C and aux D. It doesn't redirect aux A. That's the power of this, of the way the order works. So aux D is being affected by aux A here. Then aux D sends its affected information to track 9. And that's gonna change this. So it's a little bit confusing, but if you work through this example, this is a good example, you'll figure it out. And once again, if I mute the track, it stops sending the auxes to track 9. Now, one other thing I have to show you is that the order of the track also makes a difference. Yeah. So right now, let's do a more simple example. I want to show you some more redirect examples stroke rules. So we have a nifty SH101 pattern going on here. Not much happening, some notes, and then I'm random masking gate, just these two at the end. And then I'm on track C, I'm transposing some notes on aux row C, and on aux row B, I'm masking aux row C, so those transposes don't happen all the time. So we have a little interesting funky pattern that's changing enough to keep me interested, and hopefully you interested as well. So I've set up some redirects on another pattern here. See this one? It's called down 5. So what this does is aux row A redirects auxes to track 3. Aux row B just transposes everything down by -5 semitones. Very simple. So what happens when I... There we go. You can hear that. It transposes everything down 5 semitones. Pretty obvious, this one. Remember our global mute track? Imagine if you had another track muting and unmuting this. You see, that's another thing you could do. But anyway, I digress. So in this next track, track 8, I have another P3 pattern set up. No instrument, don't need one. And in this one, I'm doing the same thing. Redirecting to redirecting to track 3 from aux A. I'm transposing everything up 3 semitones on this one. Let's hear what that does when I turn the track on. There we go. Pretty obvious again. Now what happens if both of them are on? This one transposes down by 5. This one transposes up by 3. Aha! It transposed down 5, and then this transposed up 3 from the down 5. So it's transposing down 2 is the mathematical outcome of that. So that's one thing to note. The transpose will add onto other ones from different tracks when you're redirecting, as expected. However, there's another thing you can do. Let's go back to our original pattern. On this track 9, I have a P3 pattern which is not transposing. This is the redirect. It's setting the note, and it's setting all these notes I have on. It's setting all them to C4. So it's not transposing, it's just setting. Remember that. You can hear that. Some of the notes are now all set to C4. And I have another track here. Another P3 pattern. And this is doing the same thing, except it's not setting the notes to C4, it's setting the notes to A, different octaves of A. So what happens if both of these are on? What happens is the track 10 wins out over track 9, because the set note doesn't add onto something, it just sets it. And the higher track will beat a lower track when you're setting stuff. And that is the case for a lot of aux events where you set something and you're not adding onto it or subtracting from it. The higher track will win out over the lower track. And if I turn this track 9 on and off, it's not doing anything because track 10 is overruling it. But if I turn track 10 off, we're going to hear track 9. Then I turn track 9 off, back to our original pattern. So, something to remember with the redirects. The track position matters, and also the position in which row also matters. So if you set something up and you think, this should be working, why is it not working? Double check that you're in the right row and that it's redirecting properly. And also remember about the track, higher tracks versus lower tracks. that is, I think, pretty much all I'm going to do for the auxes to track N command. It's a very powerful command, well worth investigating deeply. The last redirect aux event is what we're going to cover now. Let me show you. Let me be smart about this. I'm going to put it on row B. Am I? Row C. So, into the redirect aux menu, and we've already done auxes to track N, and we've already done aux, changing an aux to a CC, and there's 3 of those. There's one for row B, one for row C, one for row D. But the last thing we're going to look at is aux to event, and there's 3 of these as well. Aux B equals event, aux C equals event, and aux D equals event. And once again, these 3 do the same things, they just work on different aux rows. So I'm going to pick the last one, I'm going to put this on aux C, and the last one is aux D equals event. This is also a very powerful one, and has some limitations though that you have to be aware of. So what this does is, and it's pretty crazy, this basically allows you to put a different aux event on every single step of an aux row. So we choose the aux event with row C, and then it'll use the value that's on aux row D. So when I've added it here, first of all, you see grab come up straight away. The reason grab comes up straight away is because there's a list. Look, if I cycle through this is a list of every single aux event that the Cirklon has. There's 118 of them altogether. Okay, and they're not. The order is a bit strange for legacy reasons, Colin says. But if you go to this is the row view, so we're seeing it all here, and you can even see some of them, if we go back to the start, some of them say no events, there's no aux event in some of them. And if we switch to the, sorry, that was the step view. Switch to the row view, we can see it's just a number from 0 to 127, as one would expect. Now, to aid us with finding which of these, because you don't want to keep scrolling and going, all right, where's that one I want? I don't know where it is. I've made a PDF that maps all the numbers here to all the different aux event commands here. So you can, I'm going to link that in the description of the video, and you can download that and you can look up, you can go, right, I want to find last step relative. What's the number for that? Well, I have it written down here. Last step relative is number 55. So you go to 55, you're scrolling through here, you go to 55, you go back to the step view, and there, set last step relative. And that's the first one we're going to do. And we're going to put that on the very first step. We're not going to turn it on yet. On the very last step, see it's grab is number 0, so you'll always see grab at the start on this one. On the last step, we're going to change this to set last step absolute, which is number 54. I'm just looking at my piece of paper here. So if we scroll this up to 54, and we go back to the step view, you can see it says set last step absolute. That's what I was looking for. Obviously, I could have just scrolled through here and like kept an eye out for it, but that's kind of slow. Don't want to do that. So what's happening is aux row C is now set to 2 different aux commands, and they're going to pull the value. The value here specifies the aux event, and the value they're going to use for their magic is going to be on aux row D. So if I go to aux row D and I set this last step to 1, it's going to make last step absolute, which changes the length of the pattern. It's going to set that to 1. I have to turn it on though. So I'm going to turn this on here. Here, it's stuck at number 1. So I'm also going to turn on this one, which then adds 1. This is the trick I've shown you before. Set last step relative will keep adding 1 to the pattern length until it gets to the last step, and that'll set the pattern length back to 1 again. But I've done this by putting both the different aux events commands on the same row. Last step relative, last step absolute. We can put any command here, so let me give you another example. Let's go to step 7, and I want to use this step to change the tempo. So tempo, I know it's 120. There it is, set tempo. See, 119 is set MIDI channel, 118 is some mask thing. 121 is set velocity, 120 is set tempo. So it's going to pull a value from aux D. So we use aux D to pick our tempo. Tempo just changed to 75 BPM. Now, the value here, 70, isn't exactly the tempo. This is the limitation of the redirect. The aux row we're using on the bottom is just going to show 0 to 127 because it's a CC, regular CC aux row. And that causes a couple of problems. First of all, the numbers aren't going to be exactly correct with what you expect, but you can still figure it out by messing around. But it also means that some of your aux events are not going to work properly. Let's say, for example, this one, set last step relative. Normally, we can set last step relative between minus 63 and minus 16 and plus 16. But we can't in this situation because our values here go from 0 to 127, so we can't go to minus. So I'm not able to do a minus here using this redirect. That's a limitation of this command. But don't mind that. It's still really, really powerful. You can do lots of amazing stuff with it. And I'll show you something else you can do. So let's, for example, randomize aux D. What we're going to do now, that's the step I have my set tempo on. So now it's going to every time it passes, tempo is going to change. Wait until we go back there. Change to 87, 97, and so on. So every time it passes that step, it's going to change tempo. So once again, aux C, we have set last step relative on this step, change tempo in this step, set last step absolute on this step. So we've got 3 different aux events on the one row, which is insane. And you know, you can have up to 16 in one bar. And obviously we can do the usual crazy stuff that we've done with all the other aux events. So you can set up ones to change other ones. So I'll give you an example here that I like. So I've got set tempo here on step 7, and on step 8 I'm also going to do set tempo. So 120, and let's put this to 70 as well. Let's put them both to 100 actually. Right, but on the random, this is when a random plus 36, when a random minus 36. There we go, turn that on. But on this top one, I'm gonna random mask aux D so the tempo change doesn't happen every time. It only happens a percentage of the time. So let's make it happen 50% of the time on both of them. So 50-50 chance, kind of. I don't know, someone else do the maths. But there's a chance the tempo will go up, the chance the tempo will go down, the chance the tempo will stay the same. There, went up to 125, 71. And while it's doing that as well, the pattern is still doing its thing where when it gets to step 16, it will change the length of the pattern to be one step. But then step 1 will keep adding 1 to that every time it plays. So that makes for quite an interesting pattern. So that is the aux to event. Aux event. It's a very powerful one, and it's great for making stuff sounding really strange. Freeform jazz action. I'm gonna show you one last example of the redirect aux because it's so powerful. It deserves one more example. So I have an SH101 set up here, one of my SH101s, the Stephen Hennelly 101. And we're gonna go to pattern mode, and before I turn the pattern on, I'm just gonna show you what I've set up so you can see see if you can figure out how it's gonna sound. First of all, just have some notes here. They're not so important though. What's important is the third row, auxes. This is where I have my auxd equals event. So on aux row, we have a lot of different things. So on step 1, I've got set direction, and that's going to be changed by the auxes above it, randomize auxd, because set direction is going to get its value from auxd, but auxd is going to be randomized. So set directions on step 1. On step 2, we have set tempo. On step 3, we have transpose by a number, but it's randomized. On step 4, we have random mask gate. On step 5, we have set scene transpose, which is also randomized by the row above it, the randomized auxd. Step 6, we have step repeat. On step 7, we have another repeat. That's repeat velocity. I want to change that to repeat notes. There we go. On step 8, we've got set normal time base. On step 9, we have another set tempo. On step 10, we have another repeat. On step 11, another set tempo. On step 12, another scene transpose, which is being randomized. On 13, another set direction. On 14, yet another set tempo. I wonder if the tempo is going to be changed. On step 15, another set tempo. And on step 16, another repeat. So are you ready for some freeform electronic space age madness? Well, you should be, because not only is the SH101 selected, on track 5, I've got a MIDI direct set up. What this is doing is it's on aux row A, I'm directing all the auxes to the track of my SH101 on it. And on aux row B, I've set MIDI channel. So I'm setting 3 different MIDI channels which go to my SH101, my Mini Moog Model D original, old oscillator version, and also the Moog 1 original new oscillator version. And this pattern is set to random, the direction there at the top. And it's also, the time base is set to 8. It's half speed, so it's not going to change the MIDI channel too quickly. And it's going to change it in a random fashion as well. So, enough of yapping. Let's get turning on the patterns. So, as you can hear, it's pretty freeform. Also, to add to this madness, right at the end, I've got my delay, the Ecosystem Empress delay set up with an aux pattern. And what this is doing is on aux D, I have the delay CC message set to 40, but on aux C, I'm randomizing the delay by -60, although it's probably too much, but it doesn't matter. So that's going to keep changing the delay. There we go. There's the delay. So coupled with this effect, which we're changing, and that'll be affected by the BPM as well, because everything's affected by the BPM. Let's turn these on again. Gotta be careful with the feedback, otherwise I'm gonna be blowing my little headphones, blowing my ears as well probably. So, that's the redirect. Imagine playing this 5 in the morning in Panorama Bar. You'd get deported from Germany if you dropped that, probably. So that's the end of the redirects. We are now going to look at the inter-track group of aux events. I have my trusty SH101 performing synthesizer duties at the moment. Let's check it out. These are the notes, pretty normal. I've got a random mask gate on a few of the steps just to keep it interesting. It's amazing how just varying one note on and off in a pattern makes it much more interesting to the ear. That's the beauty of the aux events. But right now, we're going to look at inter-track. So in this group, there are 5 aux events. There's grab, swap, push, transpose by track N, and transpose by track N plus B. And we're going to look at transpose by track N first, as this is a pretty easy one. You just load it up, and then you pick what track you want to transpose this one by. And what it's going to do is, it's going to take the notes from the other track on each step that the other track is playing on, and it's going to transpose these notes by that amount that it's above or below its root note. As always, it's easier to show you rather than explain it. So we're on track 3 at the moment, and our pattern we're going to grab from is on track 4. But you'll notice track 4 isn't on. It doesn't have to be on. And also, the pattern, none of the notes are activated. The notes are there, right? It shows you notes, but none of the notes would play because all the gates are turned off. But they don't need to be on for this to work. It'll still grab them. So let's go back to our pattern here. We're going to change this to 4. Let's gang it actually. I usually do this as quick. So you can hear the change straight away. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening is it's looking at track number 4, the pattern on track number 4, which is this one. And it's transposing each of the notes on pattern number 3 by this one, by how far away it is from, I think, C3. Let's have a look. Let's just reset this and go to... That was my original pattern. So when you set this to C5, it doesn't transpose at all. C5 is the middle range. I suppose that's the phrase to use. But if I change it up an octave, it's going to transpose my previous pattern up an octave. Let's just go down a few semitones. And it's changing it. Now, I'm changing all these notes uniformly, but you can mess around. And break the pattern. So it's changing the transpose now because the notes are different. And also, you can do interesting things like you can set this so it's only 15 steps long. So each time the first pattern plays, it'll be getting different transposes because the patterns won't be aligned up. You can also set the direction to random on this. All kinds of stuff. You can set the time base to something different. So that will change what note pattern 3 sees each time it tries to transpose. So let's get this back to a more normal. Because I just want to show something else. Let's leave it transposed using F4. And go back to our SH101 pattern. So that was transposed by track N. Now the other one here, transposed by track N plus B, is almost exactly the same. There's one difference though. I'll show you what that is. If we go back to our track that we grabbed from, on the P3 pattern, for each track, you can transpose each track itself in the bar view, like this. Now, we're not hearing anything because this track 4 isn't playing any other synth. And the aux event on track 3 ignores this transpose. However, if I change this to transpose by track N plus B, that's plus the bar transpose. So now it won't ignore the bar transpose on this pattern on track 4. And I'll show you that. We check the... See, I'm changing the transpose. It's going to keep changing. It's changing pattern 4, the pattern on track 4, and the pattern on track 3 changes accordingly. So, that's the transpose by track N and the transpose by track N plus B aux events. They're pretty simple, but combined with other aux events, they can be very, very interesting. Do all the same stuff, randomize them, mask them, all the usual stuff that you're going to be a pro at pretty soon. Next, in the inter-track group of aux events, we're going to have a look. There's 3 more. There's grab, swap, and push. What grab does is it takes the track settings from another track and uses it in this track. And push is the exact opposite. It takes the track settings in this track and pushes it to another track. And when I say push, the settings still work in this track. It just makes the other track use the same settings. And swap kind of does the same thing. Swap takes the settings from the other track and pushes the settings from this track to the other track. So it's a combination of grab and push. So the 3 of them basically have the exact same setup. So I just need to go through grab and then push and swap. You'll be able to figure them out as well. They're exactly the same, basically, except they just affect the other track and so on. So let's go in here. First of all, I want to show you, I've got a pattern on track number 4. It's not playing. Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be playing. Doesn't need to, it can be muted. It's fine. And on this track, I have every single note is on, and these are all the notes. You can't hear this at the moment. And also, I've got delay set up, so we can hear that when we grab it. We haven't grabbed it yet, though. So let's go back to track number 5. And we've added the grab event, and we want to grab from track 4. So we move this to track 4. I'm just going to turn it on for every step. You can already hear I've grabbed the note from track 4. So if I adjust this, you can see I can grab the notes from track 1. Now there are no notes in track 1 because track 1 is my CK rhythm, analog rhythm pattern. And there's no notes in track 2. None. There is something on track 3. If you have any patterns just left there muted, it'll still grab the notes from them. Track 4 is the one I want to grab the notes from though. But we can grab notes from every pattern from 1 to 16. Sorry, every track 1 to 16. Only the first 16 tracks. And after the 16 tracks, the next setting is grab the velocity from the 16 tracks, any of the 16 tracks. Now my SH101 is not velocity sensitive, so we're not going to hear much with this, but I'll just show you. You can figure that out though. The next is grab the length of the track from any of the 16 tracks. Next up we have delay, so we're going to hear this. Grab it from number 4. Remember I had delay on track number 4? Now we're hearing it on our track number 5 because I've grabbed the delay from track number 4. It's been annoying though, let's get rid of that. So now I'm grabbing it from all the other tracks, but there's no delay on those. Just going through all the settings for you. This is an interesting one. This grabs the gate. So on track number 4, I have the gate on for every step. On track number 5, I don't. But now it's going to take the gates from track number 4 and use them as the gates on this track. So every track, every gate, every step is going to gate. Let's keep going. That was the gate from track number 4 up to 16. Next up we have the tie. We talked about ties earlier, but you can grab them from other tracks. Next we have the X. The X is defeat, transpose, and defeat force to scale. You can grab that from other tracks. I don't use that much, but it's there if you want to play around with it. Next we have grab everything, all the settings from the track. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to track 4. And what we're hearing now is we're hearing track 4's gates, track 4's notes, and track 4's delay. All of the track 4 settings. You don't want to listen to that for too long though, because it's a bit annoying. Now, after this are some other settings that we're not going to talk about now because they relate to accumulators. We're going to do accumulators another day. But this one is grab the current note plus accumulator. This one is grab the current note plus accumulator for track 2 all the way up to track 16. This is grab the current note plus bar transpose. So if we go to this and transpose the bar, that'll grab that. Just gating all the steps again. And we have that for track 1 to 16. Then we can grab the velocity plus accumulator. We'll talk about accumulators another day again. Now, this last one, you can grab the aux B, C, and D value. This gets a little bit complicated, so I'm going to set up another example. Yeah. Okay. This is the last of the inter-track demonstrations. I want to do just show you one more important thing about the order of aux events. Let's go into my SH101 pattern here. I've already said lots of times about aux A gets run first, then aux B, then aux C, then aux D. So, what do we have here? Currently we have aux A's is random mask gate on those 2 steps, just to vary the pattern a bit. Nothing on aux B, I have that turned off, it's just CC4, not doing anything. Aux C is the interesting one here. We're grabbing the value from aux D on track 6. This is track 7, and we're grabbing the value from track 6 for aux D. And on aux D here, I have set note. So that means let's go to track 6 and let's go into the pattern. Now on track 6, down the bottom, I have all these values. Just this is set to CC0. Doesn't matter what it's set to. I have all these values, but they're all turned off. So when I turn them on, now they're active. They're going to be grabbed by track 7. But because it's all the number 40, it's just one note. So if I change it like that, it'll just be notes. It's grabbing the value and it's turning that into a set note. So that's quite boring. It's not doing anything. So on my aux, I'm going to randomize aux D by -10. Let's turn that on. So now we can hear the note being randomized. So once again, track 7 is grabbing the value from aux D on track 6. And track 6, I'm randomizing aux D with aux C. Now, here's where the order is important. If we go back here, if I move track 7 to track 5 to before track 6, hold on, copy. Here we go. Now listen. The notes stop being randomized. Why is that? The reason for that is that the aux events, not only are they done in order of the row here, row A, B, C, D, they're done in order of track. So track 1, row A, B, C, D happens, then track 2, row A, B, C, D, and so on. So track 5 now, I'm going row A, B, C, D, and track 5 is grabbing aux D from track 6 before track 6 gets to randomize it. That's what's happening there. It's a bit much to get your head around, but if you practice this yourself, you'll get a better grasp of it. But basically, the track 5 is happening before track 6. So that's why the notes aren't getting randomized. And if I move track 5 to track 7, which I do by select track 5, hold down copy, hit track 7, we can hear straight away notes are being randomized again because the track 6 randomize is happening before track 7 grabs it. So, clear as day, right? Like everything, you just practice it a little bit, you'll figure it out. And always remember the golden rule, the order matters. So if something isn't happening and you think it should be, just double check the order that you've got it all set up on. And that is the end of the intertrack aux event group explanation. Congratulations! You've made it to the end of my brief introduction to the Cirklon Aux events. For a while there, I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the end, but I did, and you did too. I'd just like to thank Colin Fraser, first of all, for making the Cirklon, but also for putting up with lots of annoying questions from me about things I should have already known. Sorry, Colin, and thanks very much for answering all my questions and for all the firmware updates. Special hello to Paul Nagel. It's all his fault. He's the guy that gave Colin the idea to create aux events. You might know of Paul Nagel, author, musician, and former reviewer for Sound on Sound magazine. Paul owns a Cirklon and a P3, so he's one of the originators, original users. Just like to say hello to Joachim Pop, aka Techno Legend Speedy J, who invited me, Colin, and Paul onto his video online chat show, Knob Twiddlers Hangout. It was a few weeks ago, and we had a 2-hour chat about the Cirklon and some synths and things. So if after watching this 3-hour video of the Aux events, if you feel like a 2-hour video on the Cirklon, you can check out the interview in the link provided in the description of this video. Also want to say hi to Alex, aka Myler Melodies, who runs a great video channel. He murdered my accent recently in his latest podcast with renowned producer Jamie Liddell. I'm going to leave you a link to that as well so you can listen to him try to do a version of my accent, and I'll let you figure out if you got anywhere near or not. The music you're listening to right now is from a new record I have coming out in about a week or two. It's called Philatelic Diethylamide, which is obviously very easy to pronounce. This is the cover, well, without that's a sticker that they put onto it. The label is 030303 Records. They're based in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Sorry guys for mocking your accent. People mock my accent all the time, it's allowed. Anyway, if you want to support me, want to buy some music and hear what I get up to with the Cirklon, you can check out that record. You can buy it on Bandcamp as well. I'll put the link in the description of the video. This is one of the tracks off it. So, the next video will be about accumulators, I think, because that's the one group of aux tents we didn't cover in this video. That's it from me. I should really go outside and get some sunshine. Hope you're all doing okay in this eventful year. Good luck with the music. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.